Olivia A. Sometimes the most brilliant and intelligent minds do not perform well on standardized tests because they do not have standardized minds, by Deanne Ravitch. Everyone in this room has taken a standardized test, whether it was the ACT, a STAR reading test, or an MCA. Standardized testing requirements in public schools should be eliminated. First, I will explain how test-centric learning has corrupted our education system. Next, I will explain the inequity surrounding standardized tests. And lastly, I will reflect on the purpose of the American education system. According to Amy J. Bach, who received her PhD in education from the University of Pennsylvania and is currently an assistant professor of literacy at the University of Texas at El Paso, in the Texas Journal of Literacy Education, published July 2020, she states that test-centric learning can be defined as teaching specifically for the test, not proficiency on a subject. This results in narrow and uniform curricula and instruction. For example, one class that was involved in a study was found to put more emphasis on a formulaic essay structure than they did on the actual content of the essay. In a climate that makes it so difficult to find the facts, it is more important than ever that students can create and defend their ideas. In many cases, resources are diverted from curricular resources to tests and test preparation materials. One school had a garden that students tended to. However, funds for this garden were put towards something that students are decidedly less passionate about: standardized testing. Many schools are also investing in online test preparation materials, which is taking away from that teacher to student instruction that is so important. Next, I will explain the inequity surrounding standardized testing. Standardized testing creates inequity. According to Amy B. Shuffleton, who received her PhD in Educational Policy Studies at the University of Wisconsin and is currently a professor in philosophy at the Loyola University Chicago, in the journal Educational Theory, published November 2020, she states that standardized testing has always created divides amongst students. It's meant to. In Texas schools, advancing to the next grade level depends on your score on a standardized test. Many schools will actually publicly display test scores to the classes. Both of these circumstances result in unnecessary pressure for students to perform well on standardized tests. There's also a direct correlation between race, class, and test scores, and there always has been. In the 1960s, test questions were pre-tested, and if there were questions that white students performed poorly on but black students performed well on, those questions were not included on the test. There are also many cultural biases surrounding test questions. And while these cultural biases are not always intentional, they do create unfair advantages and disadvantages for students. In Chicago schools, the schools with more white students have much better test scores than the schools with more black students. Lastly, we will reflect on the purpose of the American education system. According to Deborah Meyer, who received her master's at the University of Chicago and has held various roles in public education for over 60 years, in the book Beyond Testing, 7 Assessments of Students and Schools More Effective Than Standardized Testing, published in 2017, she explains that the central purpose of the public education system is to create graduates who can effectively participate in democracy by exercising judgment, weighing evidence, and defending their ideas. Standardized testing does not help students, schools, or teachers accomplish this. In fact, standardized tests give students the idea that there is one answer and one way to get the answer, which is rarely the case. There's also the fact that students are generally not motivated by test scores. Not to mention, scores are not received until months after tests are taken, making the scores useless to teachers and students. Americans believe in holding their schools accountable. However, standardized testing is not the way to accomplish this. There are alternative methods alternative ways that communities can hold schools accountable. For example, self-assessments, teacher assessments, or school reviews. First, I covered how test-centric learning has corrupted our education system. Next, I covered the inequities surrounding standardized tests. And lastly, I explained how standardized testing does not align with the values America has for its education system. Standardized testing requirements in public schools must be eliminated. Our goal is not to create a standard mind, so why are we so reliant on standardized testing? If we can adopt the idea of getting rid of standardized tests, we can allow all minds to shine in their own bright ways.